whoever the guy is who got her pregnant also gets to stay out of the
Mm,
drama and the shame or however that might have affected his life in that time. And the child might grow up in a more loving and supportive environment because he's not in this household where he's like a source of shame for them from their perspective.
yeah.
So I wonder if that's part of the teachings of that tale, to say
Mm,
like, okay, he kind of selflessly did what was the bringing people into a better place. But it's difficult to know though, because one of the things you say, it's like, okay, what's the right and wrong thing to do? I think that comes back to intention, because you can intend to do whatever is best based on your wisdom, your understanding of the situation. If that's really your intention, then that's the best you can do. And even sometimes you try to do the right thing and ends up causing more trouble. Or
yeah.
sometimes you can be maybe mean or rude or do something wrong, and then it ends up actually benefiting the person somehow, and so it's tough to say like, okay, what is the objectively right or best thing for a person, because also you don't know how their life might unfold one way or another. So yeah, I feel like the intention again comes back to being such a
Yeah.
crucial point.
I do get that that point of view from people from time to time. Like for
Mm.
example, some people tell me that it's good to have like verbal arguments, about something. It shows your
Okay.
passion, right? Like you fight about a
Okay.
certain idea. But I would say that discussion is healthy, but why discussing if you're trying to hurt the other person by trying to prove your point, then I think it's not
Yeah.
healthy. Then that's not passion to
Mm.
me.
I was gonna
Passion would,
say, is their intention really to be passionate? Like, sure, if you want to have a verbal argument and you're like, well, I'm only arguing because I want to express passion, like that's my true, like authentic, true
yeah,
real expression, real reason. Okay, then it probably won't end up being a negative argument where people are trying to hurt each other anyways. But
yeah.
I feel like that's not probably that's an excuse, it sounds like, in most
Mm.
situations. But yeah, go on, because yeah, that's such an interesting thing to say.
Because the way I look at it is that, okay, let's say we have a theme we need to discuss. I think about it in a certain way. You think about it in a certain way.
Hmm.
So the mutual understanding is that, okay, we're going to discuss the topic, right? I'm not going to try to convince you I'm right. You're not going to try to force it on me, let's say. But our
Hmm.
intent is to know the truth. So I'll go as deep as I can into my understanding, and you'll do the same. Then we'll evaluate it. And it can be done without trying to hurt each other. It's not as if it's
Sure.
a game where you need to win, I need to win. I bring more arguments to win. It's not that. I think the truth is beyond all the games, the mind games we play. The truth is just the truth.
Absolutely. One of my favorite texts in the world is the Tao Te Ching,
Mm,
and it's of course, going to the original. When I study the original Chinese characters, I study Chinese a little bit, but I don't speak it in any
mm,
at any real level. But when you go to the original characters, there's a lot more depth there. So, but in a translation, which I like, that's my disclaimer, but it says that those who know speak, or those who do not know speak, and those who know do not speak,
mm,
basically. But it's ironic because this is written down in a book, so it's like this is being spoken, but there is some, the idea of what you're expressing, where it's like, okay, the truth is actually, if you want to express the truth, you're not going to be able, the truth with a capital T, like some transcendent, um like understanding. It's not going to be through words. There's no way that words are going to be able to convey that depth and that truth. So yeah, that's something that I always think about, when that you reminded me of.
yeah. And I think there is a deep trust in life itself by those who practice the way, or those who live in the truth. Like they don't need to justify or prove whatever they're doing. They just know that life is going to take care of it. So if we look at the story, he just focus on his intent because that's what he can control. And at the end of the day, the people who tried to hurt him or lied, they were the ones who suffered. So they were the ones who were unhappy. And him, despite all the things that life threw at him, which should have made him unhappy, let's say, he found peace in all those things. It's like when they accused him, he was like, okay, cool. They gave him the baby. Okay, so now that's my task, you know? Not be a teacher, but grow up that child. He took it.
Yeah.
And when the mother took the child away from him, he didn't get attached to the child. He did what he had to do. Gave him all the love he had, and then the child went with his mother at the end of the story. So he found peace in everything which happened to him. That's beautiful.
I wonder even if all that wasn't the greatest blessing that could have been in his life, because we don't know what he was thinking. Maybe he was tired of being a Zen teacher and having all these students he had to explain the same thing to every day. And maybe he always wondered, oh, what would it be like to be a father? Oh, well, I'll never get to be a father because I've chosen this path. And, so maybe it was like being able to raise a child, be the father kind of in solitude by himself, was like the thing he would have wanted the most, and could have never imagined how he could possibly have that life. It would have seemed impossible. And just by accepting and not resisting and not getting caught up in the ego games of, well, I don't want them to think something that's not true, or I don't want people to be mad at me when it's not my fault, etc., etc. By just being accepting, okay, is that so? Then he was able to have a completely different experience that wouldn't have been possible otherwise.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
It comes back to perception, right? Like some people would perceive those things to be bad, but he did not see these things to be bad. He was like, okay, it happened, we deal with it. Something else happens, we deal with it. And he found, that's the thing. I don't think he expects, okay, that's where people don't understand the Zen guys. Like, we don't expect good things to happen to us, right? Now, that doesn't make us become negative people. We just accept whatever comes to us. And then we do the best out of whatever is given to us. Like, you'll notice that the Zen people, they don't do positive visualization. Like, my life is going to be that great, I'm going to have this in my life, and I'm going to do positive affirmations every day, I'm going to attract those things. We don't do those things in Zen.
Okay.
Yeah, we accept life the way it is. The way it is. We've got COVID right now. Okay, yeah, we do our best with whatever we have. We're not going to keep thinking why it happened, conspiracy theories, it leaked from the lab, and what is that going to bring to you?
Yeah.
You're going to make things worse. So you try to see how you can make things better. And that's what my teacher was saying yesterday, I think. Everything you try to teach. So he was speaking about my teaching, basically. So everything you're teaching to people, try to leave them in a better place. And he's right, man. And I would say that every person you meet, every task you do in your life, try to make things better. If that's what you really do every day, for every simple task, like, I don't know, cleaning the house or smiling to someone on the street, you're leaving the person better. Oh, he smiled to me,
So true.
You can do so many things. Sometimes you don't do anything, and that's great. You don't do anything, like, you don't go on social media and just read the whole day. It's good for your mind. You don't post negative things which would just make people more pumped up, like a bit the way the Twitter algorithm works. It just excites people. So there are so many things we can do the more we become aware of things.
Yeah. No, you reminded me, this whole conversation is reminding me of another story that I really like. that always sat well with me, and it might be the same Zen master. I wouldn't be surprised because he sounds very similar.
Mm.
But it goes, it's, I think it's a Chinese parable, so it's about an old man in a village living with his son and his horse. And so one day the horse runs away, and all the villagers come and hear about this, so they come to the old man and they say, oh, you poor man, we're so sorry to hear that. That's terrible, you know, what misfortune. And he just, you know, nods and says, perhaps. And the people then go away that day. The next day the horse comes back with a flock, not a flock, a group of wild horses, with him following. And so now the old man has a bunch of horses. And so the villagers come and say, oh, how fortunate, how great that this has happened. Look at how much wealth you have now. He says, perhaps. So they go away, of course. The next day, as the son is training the horses and trying to break them so they can be rideable, he falls off and breaks his own leg. And so the people come back and say, oh, we're so sorry to hear about your son. What a misfortune, what a tragedy. Of course, the old man again just says, perhaps. And then so the next day after that, the the army comes and they're conscripting a son from each family to join the army to go off into battle. But because his son had a broken leg, they didn't take him into the army. And so the villagers again come back, oh, you're so fortunate. And again, he says, perhaps. And that's where the story ends. But you get the idea of, you know, he's just the equanimity, I think, is how you've called it before. Not trying to decipher what is good, what is bad, you know, and yeah, accepting.
True.
I really love that story. I try to remember it. Yeah. Okay.
There we go. Yeah, the story you just said, I know that story too, so I'm not going to use it in the next podcast.
Oh no, I've got to keep one parable per podcast episode. I'll try to remember that.
No, that's cool. No, it fits exactly what we're discussing. And yeah, I think it's about more or less the same thing, isn't it? Impermanence, and how sometimes we think that something is bad, but it ends up being good. Or sometimes we think something is good, it ends up being bad. And we've got once again, we've got no control, but we can't just say that we've got no control. Like some people, with some people, bad things happen, and then they say, yeah, but we've got no control, it's life, it's destiny. Now that's wrong, because if you contributed for that thing to happen, you need to know and you need to take responsibility. And this is why I think the core aspect of all these stories is it points to the idea that, yeah, but the main character in the story always had a check on his or her intent. That we can see in the story that, like, for example, the story I laid out at the start, the Zen master had the best intent throughout the story. But everything which happened around him, he had no control, but he had control on his intent. And he could have been bitter, and then he says, no, that's not true. Let's go and talk to your daughter. And then something happens. Maybe the life of the girl would have been ruined, right? If the Zen master reacted. Maybe he's forcing all those things, and then he's saying, okay, what can they do? It's just my reputation, right? Let me take it on the chin. And maybe deep inside he knew the girl would regret, or maybe he didn't know. I don't know. We're just speculating here. But what I'm saying is, he had full control on his intent, and he did the right thing, I would say.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, it just to me, the question that comes up, because I'm like, okay, well, how would I take this teaching and apply it in my own life? Right, is a question that I'm asking myself. And so there is like this, on a surface level, it almost seems like there should be a passivity, you know, and just say, okay, don't argue with anyone, don't argue with anything, just say, all right, and kind of be neutral about it. which makes sense and is like more of a stoic. And I think on the Zen side is very um true to that philosophy, to those philosophies. But then there is a sense of like you have to make a decision, like I guess I think there is, I don't know if you have to, but this is my thinking process out loud, is that like sometimes it's not just about reacting to what comes to you, because that's what both of these stories had in common.
Yeah.
It was the Zen master was just sitting at home and this came to his doorstep and he just said, okay. And same with the old man, all these things just kind of happened to him and he was like, okay, I'm rolling with the punches, as you said. But what happens if you're like, well, okay, I need to, like make money, earn a living, and you have to choose, am I going to do it this way? Am I going to do it that way? Am I going to go to school? Am I going to take this job? Where it's more of you have to make an active choice rather than just wait and see if someone offers you a job and then you say, okay, I'll do that job. That's not an option. So how does this philosophy, do the wisdoms and the teachings of this story like have any influence, like teach you in those situations? What do you?
Yeah. Okay, that's a very valid point, and it's often discussed whether spirituality makes us become like a sort of doormat where we just accept things, right? No, it's
okay. I haven't heard
actually.
that discussion, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. And in the story, I would say that he takes responsibility over certain things, like he looks after the child.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the Buddha, if you look at some of the suttas, even the Buddha used the term fool, like don't argue with the fool. It's like in the Buddhist teaching, all right? And I think that's profound. It's because what he's trying to point to you is that it's pointless to discuss with some people. It's useless. So the Buddha talks about oneness on one side, about equanimity, and then he still tells you that he still used the word fool. So when I started to study Buddhism, I was like, yeah, but how can the Buddha use the term fool in the sutta? I was like, he's supposed to be the enlightened being. But that was me when I was very young, right? When I was 17 or 18. So how can the Buddha use the term fool? Is that not like saying, okay, there are some people like this and I'm the enlightened being and all that? But now when I look at it, I think he's right. There are some people with whom it's useless to speak because they are so narrow-minded and nothing will get there. I mean, you can talk to them, but you end up losing your time. So I think in this story, the Zen master saw that they had so much anger and resentment in them that whatever the girl said, they just took it. They did not investigate. At no point they said, okay, but how can the Zen master be doing that, right? We know the Zen master for how many years? They just took it like it came. And this is the danger. And this is what people do. If I just come and tell you, Shams, I heard that this person did that. And if you just get carried away, say, oh, he did this, and then, you get into that story. Is that a good thing? No. Maybe the reaction should be, oh, is that so? Maybe we need to check it out. Maybe it's not true. I believe that's a lesson on its own. We shouldn't just get carried away by what people say.
Yeah.
What their version
is. That's so true.
But yeah, the danger is there that, I'm spiritual, I'm just going to accept. But actually, I would say that Zen doesn't make you passive. Actually, if you look at the story of Zen, you had the samurai people who used to study Zen, and they were like the most ruthless people that existed. You don't mess with the samurais, right? So I think it makes you feel us in a certain way, but it makes you also that kind of person with ethics, with integrity. With the samurai, if you look at the story, if you do something which is disgraceful, you actually I forgot the term, but you kill yourself.
Harakiri.
Exactly, because it's disgraceful, right?
Yes.
And that's the kind of life the Zen people live also. You know, in one of our precepts, we said that we're going to try to reach enlightenment, even if enlightenment is impossible. So we are very extreme into whatever we do. I mean, we have that idea of what is perfect, and every day we try to live and try to get close to that. We know we won't be able to, but all the Zen masters said that what's the point of having a goal if it can be met? You should have a goal which we can't meet. And this is what makes life worth living, you know? So
Very interesting.
that's another twist on the story.
So what I'm getting from this is that there's an internal goal, and that any choice you make externally is for the purpose of reaching that internal goal, which is enlightenment, or whatever this impossible level of being is that you're speaking of that can't be achieved. So if you need to make a decision of, oh, how should I do this or should I do that, then a way to do that from a Zen perspective, potentially, what I'm thinking is to consider which one is going to, I guess, challenge you to be able to move towards that ultimate goal, which I guess that's the way on a certain level, since there is no specific way where it's like, oh, this is the way because I followed these rules and that's the way. So like I always have the impression that the way is unique to each individual, and where one person's way might be to turn right, the other person's will be the exact opposite, to go left, and each one is leading them to that higher purpose. Yeah. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is that there's no specific way. There are different ways, and people find themselves in different ways. And as a Zen guy, what we believe in is that there is no enlightenment to reach as such. So there is a famous line in Zen where we say that we don't practice to become enlightened. Okay, we are already enlightened, so we don't practice to become enlightened. Practice is enlightenment. So when you are sitting in meditation, you are enlightened. When you are acting as the Buddha, then you are the Buddha. And how do we act as a Buddha? It's when we act as a Buddha. So when we are acting not for our own selfish interest, but the action itself is pure. And if you look at the story of the Zen master, they insult him and he doesn't move. And that's like the perfect response. I'm not going to justify whatever I'm doing. I'm living my life as pure as I can. And this is enough for me, you know. I don't need people to praise me. Oh, Zen master, you're so great. And even if you insult me, it doesn't move me. I know what I'm doing. So it's that sort of confidence, right? And then they throw the baby to him. He takes responsibility. So his intent is still pure. So that's coming in his way. He's treating that baby as something sacred. You know, I'm going to do my duty. So in each part of the story, he's acting as the Buddha. The Buddha would have done that, you know, be completely selfless.